wasn't designed by the we or the us. And its design was not necessarily patriarchal anyway. I have no issue with patriarchy. I actually support and I'm an advocate of patriarchy. But what we see here in the West is oppressive, extreme patriarchy. So we can't really use it as a healthy model of what patriarchy is, because if we were to start talking about matriarchy in the West, it would be the same oppressive model. It would be kind of like what you have the feminist movement purporting, where you're just replacing one oppressor for the other. So it doesn't really speak to, let's say, the African womanist movement, where the move and the shift is not towards who's going to lead, but the move and shift is towards equality. So I would say that first, when we're speaking about patriarchy, I think it's important for us to separate what this oppressive system is versus healthy patriarchy, which was always used in traditional times to build civilizations. Civilizations were always built upon the format and structure of patriarchy, even the ones that were matrilineal. Okay. Now, in order to restore balance, I think it goes back to what I was saying before about defining your own personal new world order. We have to first realize that in many senses, this society is very balanced. Okay, it's just not balanced in the way where it serves people like us. But this society was never designed without spirituality, magic, occultism, and geometry in mind. All of those things are very present in Western society. So you have magic, you have cyclical and abstract thinking all in, and you got it in the airports, you got it in the building designs, you have it in the names. Traditionally a judge would be called a magistrate. Well, you have to look at that word, magistrate, magi. That's a magician. Okay, and he sits on a robe. And he wears a robe, he sits on a bench, and all rise when he comes in, and above him says, "In God we trust." So that means when you're going into a courtroom, you're going into a temple. Right. So it's balanced. It's certainly balanced. You have warfare and aggression, and at the same time, you have a whole lot of ritual and symbolic magic and oppression used against the people. So I think what's important for those of us who have recognized that it's not these are basic exercises that you can do to start to appreciate and see the world through a more balanced perspective. Now, of course, and we're all really talking on the individual level. Your implementation of electromagnetic energy is also vital. So if we understand the sciences of electromagnetism, things that are electric are things that go out and expand. This is your masculine energy. Things that are magnetic are things that attract or are receptive. So when you put those together, we have what's called electromagnetics. Okay, so understanding simple electronics, things like that, get a book on electronics and start understanding how positive and negative current works, how energy flows, in a positive and negative direction. And when you put them together, like if you take two battery cables and you let them hit each other, you get sparks. You don't want to get in the middle of that. So that lets you see when these energies are flowing in their proper directions, okay, there's a certain smoothness, there's a certain balance that occurs. But when you start to cross and blur the lines of gender, and you start to blur the lines of energies and polarities, you get explosions, okay, and everything stops, car shuts off. Okay, so, those are some very simple things one can do to start to understand the balance. And, of course, always study our great models and incarnations that fully represented their their sexual disposition, whether it be masculine or feminine. Understand our deities, which is very important. If whatever societies you want to go to, doesn't matter. Make sure you study the masculine and feminine aspects of all archetypes, and it'll give you a sense of how masculine or electric moves as opposed to feminine or magnetism moves.
Right. I think that's what sparked the whole conversation, just in terms of looking at things I won't even use the word spiritual, but from a religious perspective, and first delving into spirituality, for the lack of a better word, the first observation that you gather in Western society is that the feminine aspect of any of the deities, you know, it was the all dudes club, you know, from our perspective. They took the woman and made him a ghost, you know, turned him into a ghost. And when you start to observe that from the everyday mind, just as we function in the Western world, you begin to see that, hold on, something's not quite right here. You know, and when you look in the Bible, they start talking about, you know, woman, what you're going to miss.
There are things for men to do, and there are things for women to do. And I think a lot of times when women step forward, you know, when the sisters step forward in this time, and they say, okay, now it's time, the brothers are clearing the lane for us to do what we're going to do, all they end up doing a lot of times is emulating male behavior and calling that equality. Right. And that's something that has been inherited. Yeah, that's been inherited from that feminist movement. Right. You know, so it's kind of like what the sister asked in the beginning in terms of what is masculine and feminine in the spiritual world. Well, if you understand that masculine energy is about expanding outward and feminine energy is about evolving and transforming inward, then that's what we need to start doing. So the inward would be your home, your inner circle, the children. You know, that's the inner society. The outward society would be politics, the perimeters of the village, what goes on outside the hut, quote unquote. You know, and if we can start moving to our complementary corners and working from there, I think we could get a lot done. But, you know, looking at anything within this society as an example is going to just cause you to further invest into it, even if you're fooling yourself into thinking that you're a part of a liberation movement. If you use this society as a model at any point, you're just reinforcing it.
Right. I could not agree with you more with what you said about basically what has happened with the women's liberation movement is women have learned how to be men instead of learning what it means to be a woman, what it means to be feminine, and to use that feminine energy. And one thing specifically with our women, African women, is because of slavery and our history, we have been duped into wearing the pants, quote unquote, and we are reluctant to take them off because that's where our power is. And so we have emasculated our men because we feel like we still need to wear the pants and we still need to be in charge and we still need to hold on to power, because without that we will be used and abused. So the powerful women are those who are the women, or what we consider to be powerful women, or those women who consider themselves to be powerful.
I know there are people who advocate co-leadership, but that's just foolishness. You know, if somebody comes up, if you're facing a firing squad, you don't want the mother of your children facing it with you. You know, that's just ridiculous. You know, she needs to get behind you and go run up in the mountains with the children while you maybe sacrifice yourself. But that's all right, because it ain't that big a deal as long as her and the children can continue on the legacy. So, you know, this really is on the men to fix this. And then it's on the women who attach themselves to men who have the solution to receive that seed of information and germinate it. You know, that's that interplay between the masculine and feminine. But it's really the men who have to say, I'm not relinquishing my pants, you know, as you were speaking, the proverbial pants. Sister, and if you can't understand that, then, you know, you can't walk with me. And they have to take a very hard stance in that. And that means you may have to be alone. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the Bible story. This was Adam's issue. When you look at the book of Genesis, you know, he was so afraid to be alone that he went and ate the tree of knowledge. The fruit of knowledge, you know, along with Eve, instead of just saying, you know what, you messed up, and I'm just going to have him make me another one, because I got to keep this thing going. Instead, he was so scared to be alone, he said, you know what, we'll just go into corruption together. So I think that's a lot of what's happening today. You know, the males are so afraid to stand alone as men, And in truth, when you look at, again, the energy, we're talking about the spiritual aspect, men are one, women are zero. Women are the cipher. Okay, they're everything and nothing at the same time. But men are the defining one. They're the idea, but the one stands alone. Okay, it's not a cipher where everything is inside of it. It's standing alone. And at some point as men, we have to be ready and prepared and willing to stand alone. You know, to just stand and let the wind blow through our locks and troop it like that. And that's what will attract the alpha women to the alpha men. And we'll start weeding out some of this other stuff, these betas. You know?
Right. The next logical question in terms of nation building is, do you anticipate or do you see something on a mass scale or something very small in terms of us being melanated people?
Okay.
And terminating out of something big.
Okay, yeah, that's a wonderful question. It always begins with something small. Okay, nothing ever moves in a mass level because for the most part, the masses are just empty. That if you even, we kind of just look over it, even down to some of the dances that come back, some of the slang, things like that. It's very small, but it's because of all of this massive work that we put in that this is happening.
Wow. Can you speak more to the absence of color, or what colors represented, or how they function in our everyday expression or observation of energy?
Sure, certainly. Okay, well, the first thing, when we're dealing with colors, we're dealing with humanity. Okay, that's the first thing to keep in mind. The colors represent your human corruption. So, at each side of the spectrum, you have white, and then you have black, right? Just like the yin and yang symbol. Now, the white represents the things that, it's light, things that enlighten you, and the black represents things that change you, okay? And in between your enlightenment and your changing or your transformation, you have these different stop-offs with color. And the color are just different shades that you can utilize to get to each place. So let's say if today I'm feeling militaristic, I have some work to do, I might put on all red because it invokes that feeling and that image of aggression. And I have to kind of precursor what I'm saying by saying that our associations with certain colors are really based on our cultural stance. So universally, red may not mean aggression. In some places, it may mean love. Very similar to in the Yoruba culture, we have a archetype known as Oshun. And here in the diaspora, when we want to call upon Oshun, which is the spirit of congregation, it's the energy that brings things together. So Oshun is responsible for nationalism. This is an energy that we call love. But love is just the joining. Love is conjoining. Okay. But oftentimes a call on Oshun, we may wear yellow or gold or brass, or burn a gold candle, things like that. We use that color to attract that energy. But if you go to Nigeria, Oshun is represented by the color blue because she's water. You see, so there's a cultural connection to how those colors affect you. And you personally know which colors make you feel what. But ultimately, you utilize the colors to charge your spirit in a certain direction. Now, I said spirit for a reason. Spirit is something that's present and available to us while we are here on the planet Earth. When we go into the realms of all white, or we go into the realms of all dark, we're not utilizing spirit. Spirit stops off there. And when we look at those declarations, it says, I have not, I have not, I have not, I have not.
Right.
Now, you have. You've stolen, you've lied, you've done all those different things. But what it's telling you is that your spirit is fallible. The body is fallible. Your mind is fallible. Your emotions are fallible. Your love is even jacked up. But your soul is perfect. Okay, your soul has not done any of these things. So it's evolving beyond that perfection. Okay, that was the value, going back to the Bible, that was the value of Lucifer. We need Lucifer. We're Lucifer. Nothing but light falling into darkness to be raised and redeemed back up again to the light. Whoopee. But we needed Lucifer because Lucifer looked at God and said, you know what, man, I could be better than you. You know, he just 11 times, I will. Now, that key word in there was will. Angels are not supposed to have a will. So when we know we're dealing with Lucifer, we're not really dealing with an angel. We're dealing with God talking to himself. And he was saying, I can be better than what I am right now because my perfection is corny. I'm dead. If I'm perfected, I'm not moving anywhere. You know, a piece of plastic is perfect because it won't biodegrade. So he said, okay, I got to make this Lucifer guy, and he's going to challenge me to move beyond my step, but he has to do it by falling to the dust, angel dust. He's got to fall to the dust in order to redeem again, because he's got to go through a process of corruption that's going to make him better than what he was. And it could be the most simplest thing. Whatever your soul came down here to do, to answer or to make, it could be so simple. It could be like, you know, learning how to hold your liquor. You know, and I know that sounds, but, you know, it could be something small. And we all have our different missions. And that's why we can't really look at one another and say, man, you're supposed to be doing this, man. You're supposed to have your poems and your locks and your incense, man. No.
Right.
You know, you may have just come down here to teach your family to get off the pork. And they may get off the pork and get on the turkey bacon. Okay, well, that's my job is done. That's part of my soul evolution to figure out, because my soul needed to evolve to figure out the words to say to this human, because God is not human. God doesn't feel these things. So I know it's a long answer, but that was my answer to your query.
No, that was good. Good.
Perfect. So do you see an end to the Luciferian God conversation? Is there a perfected end, or is it? Is there an end to it, or does it keep going on? You know, the Lucifer God expression.
Interchangeably, and I was wondering if you could speak to the difference between, say, a man who has an abundance of feminine energy versus a man who's maybe trying to be a woman, or a woman who has an abundance of masculine energy versus a woman who's trying to be a man.
Oh, that's excellent. I love that question. No one has ever asked me that question, but I always speak on it, but no one comes with the question directly. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Okay, so you have, well, we'll just, the examples are kind of the same, but you have a person, let's say a man, like you said, who has an overabundance of feminine energy. Okay, so you have a man who has an overabundance of feminine energy. Right. Morris Day. Okay. But it doesn't necessarily connote an imbalance. Okay. Neither does a man who has an overabundance of masculine energy necessarily connote an imbalance, because he may have an overabundance of feminine energy that's exposed and projected, but internally he may be just as balanced with masculine energy. So we never really know, you know. You can't really go by, because your projection is usually, like, even a woman, we'll take that other example. Whatever projects to the outside world is your masculine energy. Okay? Whatever the world can see, that's the light. Light is masculine. So whether the world sees masculine or feminine, the fact that they can see it, you're already projecting masculine energy. Whatever the world does not see, that exists inside the deep recesses of your body, of your soul, is your feminine energy. That's the feminine principle at work, making sure that there's an unseen part, that you have a consciousness, that you have a voice inside of you, and that something can spring from it. That's the feminine energy's job. Now, if femininity springs from it, okay. If masculinity springs from it, okay. Now, this is not the same as a man who, and if I'm saying this wrong, you know, please correct me. A man who desires to be a woman, I think is what you said, or a woman who desires to be a man. Okay. Imbalance. Now that's problematic. Okay, that's problematic, because what's happening now here is you've created a split personality because of some sort of imbalance that has entered into not the soul, but has entered into the spirit and has now caused the spirit to have an identity crisis. Mm-hmm. So what the spirit is now attempting to do is to recreate a new identity and do away with the old. Mm-hmm. Okay? But this is not going to happen because you're given this one spirit per lifetime. Okay? Mm-hmm. So now you're going to have somebody who's consistently striving to be something that they can never become. So they become depressed.
From my religious childhood background. Mm-hmm. And so I use the word prayer, but I don't think of prayer as there's some higher being that I'm begging to right. If I please you, then you will do something nice for me, something in my life, trying to make sure that you're happy so that you'll do nice things for me and give me stuff. Mm-hmm. So in that, trying to kind of reconcile some of the beliefs I have when I see and hear, think of the word prayer. And I kind of wanted you to share with our audience what your ideas of, prayer, is it something that we, in the traditional sense of you are this earthly being trying to contact spirits from the spirit world because they have access to things that you don't. So that's kind of what people think of when they think of prayer. Even those who consider themselves in the conscious community, I'm going to try to contact my angels or my ancestors because they have mm-hmm. access to stuff that I don't, so they can help me. Can you give us your insight and your idea of prayer and what prayer is and whether it is helpful or something that we should or should not do?
Sure, no problem. Okay, well, by its very definition, to pray means to beg. Okay, and more specifically in definitive context, to pray means to beg of something that you have been either separated from or you are shackled to some type of servitude to. So it could be a God who you offended or a God who you have to beg and petition to get its attention. Okay, this is the definition of pray or to invoke prayer. So is prayer itself helpful? It certainly can be. It can be. Panhandling can be helpful. If you need some money or you need some food, you can go on a corner and panhandle. Okay, but if you spend all day panhandling, then you really are not going to be able to invest the time energetically, spiritually, or mentally into moving beyond that place. Okay, and you stay in a position to perform this mythological sacrifice of itself and then return itself back up. It's going to do what it's sent to do. They have no choice. If you send an angel to do something, it has to do it. Or an Orisha or anything else. If it doesn't do it, it's because you didn't have enough will to know that it's going to be done. It's on you. It's not on them. You didn't put enough will behind it. Your heart wasn't into it. That's why it didn't get done. And we call that ashe sometimes. You didn't have enough ashe behind it or power.
Okay.
So,
wow.
In terms of communing with your ancestors, how does that work in conjunction with reincarnation? Because Uncle Larry might be back on the next thing smoking. So, mm-hmm. Who are we talking to? If he's now in the crib that's sitting beside your bed. You know what I'm saying?
You're talking to. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. What you're talking to is the temporary imprint that was left of your Uncle Larry, because in truth, there is no Uncle Larry.
Right.
Okay? Uncle Larry could have been Genghis Khan in another lifetime. And he just came down this time to have either I was a warlord in my last life, now I'm just going to have fun. I'm going to get drunk and catch every disease in the book. So the reality is, remember, this is when we were talking about spirits, right? There's a difference between a spirit and a soul. The soul continues its journey, and it's not held back because of your wishes to keep it down, to keep it earthbound. Okay?
Right.
But the spirit is something that only survives as long as it's fed. Okay? It's just like a marriage. You know, you got two individuals there. They're going to continue to be individuals regardless of what. But if they don't feed into the liberty, you know, and the healthiness and the vitality of that marriage and of that relationship, it will die. Okay? So it's the same thing with your Uncle Larry. If you stop giving Uncle Larry tribute, that spirit's going to be gone. It's like something just dissipating in the wind.
Right.
Okay? But, you know, if what you're communing with is one of his reflections, his spirit, which he doesn't need anymore where he's going. He doesn't need the spirit. Now, one of the things that you're doing in all the study that everybody does and all the spiritual work is you're trying to ensure that when you go to the next step, that you retain some of this information. Right. That's your goal. Okay? Right. That's why you do all this conscious work. Okay? So you get to the next step, it may be a totally different type of world, but you still have a sense that I'm Sean. You know, I'm Aaron. I still have some past life memories and imprints. Okay? Right. So you come back with all these gifts now. You're that 5-year-old that can speak 10 languages. Nobody knows how. Okay? Right. Because that's an old soul that keeps coming back. Right. All right? But we could still be worshiping the last, or not worshiping, I should say. Well, some people do. But we could still be giving honor and tribute to the spirit of what we had before. Again, look at someone like Bob Marley. That spirit is never going to die. Right. You couldn't, no matter what you do, because so much energy has been put into keeping that spirit alive. But that soul been gone. Right. You know, that soul been gone a long time ago. Right. It's either in the next phase. I doubt if he even came back. He probably didn't even need to come back.
Didn't need
you know
to
what I mean?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Right. But that soul been gone. We still rocking with the spirit, which is cool because it serves us here on the earth plane. But when we get off of this plane, we won't even need that either.
I got 2 computers here. I've got 2 cell phones.
And that's why it's important
to make sure that everything is
ancestors.
Wow.
So that we don't venerate.
Do you have that kind of problem? Do you have those problems with your show?
Yeah, actually, I couldn't broadcast my show properly today. I use a broadband phone, and for some reason, I didn't have service up until about maybe 5-10 minutes before your show started. I was trying to figure out how to call in, but this always happens. My show got messed up. It's just I don't know. I bring it with me. I have this same thing on cashier checkout line. As soon as I get on the line, the lights start blinking. And, you know, they call it managers every time. And it's been happening with Blogtalk.
Wow.
I just mess up people's segments all the time.
So, yeah, so there's some moments of silence. It's probably because I can't hear. It's completely blacked out. So I'm hoping that you're still talking because I can't hear anything. So I'm trying to run the book. So be patient, and hopefully it doesn't sound too crazy going on around here, but it's crazy. We've got about half an hour left, and one thing I wanted to talk about is we, with all of our religious ties, again, a lot of people who don't even consider themselves religious still live a very religious lifestyle, and in one way they do that is through considering what's right and what's wrong and what's moral and what's immoral. And human morality changes with whoever decides what's moral and what's not moral. I mean, you see that when laws change. We tend to think that our laws are connected to our morality. So if something is illegal and you break the law, right, so marijuana was immoral last week, but today it's not immoral because it's legal.